So I've gotten a few questions asking me about how I do the ketogenic diet, asking about total carbs versus net carbs. So today is a video where I'm going to just take a few minutes to talk about the difference between the two and some ideas that I have about what can help you from a psychological point of view. Hello everyone, welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. The reason I make these videos is to help people to understand that our mental health and our physical health work together to create our overall feeling of well-being. And so we need to understand physically how we're doing as well as psychologically how we're doing. So we're talking about a ketogenic lifestyle. Whether you're following total carb or net carb seems to be getting a lot of combative controversy between people. That some people feel one is better than the other. So I want to talk about the idea of total carb versus net carb and help people decide what would work well for them. And the first thing I'm going to do is explain to you what a carbohydrate is to begin with. Carbohydrates are sugar molecules. So we have things like sucrose, lactose, fructose. Those are all sugar molecules. They can be combined together, one or two molecules at a time, to create simple sugars. And when we have simple sugars, it's easier for our body to metabolize. Sugar molecules can also be combined together to create complex carbohydrates. And those are more like the beans and lentils, potatoes, like the starchy foods. So those are a bit more difficult for our body to metabolize, and they help us to feel full longer. And that's relative when I say we can feel full longer eating carbs, because obviously we all know if you eat fats, you feel full even longer. But compared to simple carbs, you feel full longer. And then we have fiber, which is again a collection of sugar molecules that are bound together in a certain way that they create insoluble fiber or soluble fiber. So they react a little bit differently in our body. There is debate about whether or not insoluble fiber is digestible. So some people react to it, some people do not. We also have sugar alcohols. Again, sugar molecules that are connected together, and there's extra hydrogens on them. And again, there's a question mark as to whether or not people react to it. Some people react to them, some people do not. So this is where the whole net carb, total carb controversy starts to show itself. Because for those people who react to fiber, for those people who react to sugar alcohols, and when I say react, what I mean is for those people who consume fiber or consume sugar alcohols and their body shows a reaction as if they ate sugar, then it's difficult for us to be able to safely say, just don't count fiber, don't count sugar alcohols. For some people, it really does need to be counted. So then basically, net carb is when we subtract sugar alcohols and fiber from the total carbohydrate content of the food, and we only use the resulting number from that. So if the total carb is 20 grams and there's 10 grams of fiber and sugar alcohols, then the resulting net carb would be 10. Versus, of course, total carb is we just take the total carbs completely and we use that in our calculations for the day. So when I started my ketogenic lifestyle, I began using net carb. And I will say that the reason that I started using net carb was not because I had some ideas about net carb versus total carb. In truth, the reason I started using net carb was because the app that I downloaded to track my carbohydrate intake used net carb. With that being said, over the course of my ketogenic journey, I have lost weight, although that wasn't my original goal. My original goal was to solve a hip issue that I was having on the right side. I wanted to get rid of that inflammation. I also realized by doing net carb and doing a healthy ketogenic diet that I was able to solve my back problems. I was able to solve all the inflammation that was happening in my body and lose weight. I have also gotten to maintenance using net carb. Why am I telling you this? It is actually possible to use net carb and lose weight. It is possible to use net carb and solve your metabolic issues. I do want to point out, since learning about net carb versus total carb, I have verified in the app that I'm using to make sure that I never go over 50 grams total carbs per day. So that I have checked for myself, because obviously 50 grams is the max that you can still say that you're doing keto. So that doesn't change. However, I'm still calculating based on net carb. The number one reason that using net carb can be very beneficial to people is because it's just easier. When you start off doing a ketogenic lifestyle and you're restricting things out of your life, using net carb allows certain foods to remain as part of your everyday eating, because the fiber is being taken out and and any sugar alcohols are being taken out. So that means that for a good number of people, you can keep small amounts of bars and snacks in your diet if you remove the fiber out of the meal. So this does allow flexibility for those people starting the ketogenic lifestyle who have a hard time giving up what they would need to give up to get their carbs, if it was total carb, to be low enough to be within that 20 gram range, even that 50 gram range for that matter. So some people will be able just to eat more comfortably doing net carb. Many of the fun foods that we eat are high in carbohydrates. Again, doing net carbs allows some of those fun foods to remain part of our diet. The negative side of using net carb is that for some people, so we're going back to those people who react to the fiber, for those people who react to the sugar alcohols, by subtracting out those fibers, but yet they're still affecting your body, you might end up not losing weight as quickly, or maybe not even losing at all. And that could be problematic. You might end up not solving metabolic issues that you're trying to solve because the fiber and the sugar alcohols are affecting you. So pluses and minuses, right? Because if I'm successful when I first begin using net carb, that's great. But I need to also pay attention to how am I progressing. There's another issue with net carb that I have, which is that manufacturers do not care as much about our health as they do about the profits. And one of the things that I've learned about is the idea that manufacturers are allowed to label something as zero carb if it has, 0.6 grams of carbs per serving. Interestingly enough, in math class, we would have all learned that if it's 0.6 or more, it rounds up to 1. But for some reason, 0.6 in the world of food can round down to 0. Now, that might not seem like a very big deal to most people, but I want to point something out. If I'm presented with a snack that the label tells me has 0 grams of carbs, there's a possibility, especially if I have a weight problem, there's a possibility that I'm going to eat more of the snack than I would if I knew it had carbs in it. What I'm saying is that I'm much more likely to eat 2 or 3 servings because it says 0 carb on it. But here's the problem. So if I eat 2 servings, I'm now at 1.2 grams of carbs that I'm accidentally not counting. It doesn't seem like a big deal when you're coming from the standard American diet world, but in the keto world where you're eating 20 grams of carbs per day, that's 5% of my carbs gone, right? And so it does become a big deal. And if I had 3 servings and 4 servings, again, I think there's no carbs in this. So manufacturers not being completely honest about what's in or how many carbs are in something, manufacturers using other sugar alcohols that are known to be bioavailable in our bodies and putting them as 0 because, well, people don't often know that that's a thing. It's problematic. One thing that I will say that is nice about starting with net carb is that if you've done really, really well with net carb and you've lost weight and your metabolic issues are beginning to be solved and you're feeling better, then if you end up in a stall, if you end up just not feeling like your progress is what you want it to be, you still have the option to go to total carb. And so you could kind of jumpstart yourself again by just focusing on total carb and really taking your carb count even lower. Now, what's interesting about doing this is that what you will see is that you will end up having a few things eliminated from your diet right away. Because when you do total carb, you'll find out that there are certain foods that we just can't make fit the 20 grams a day. And still be able to eat enough to get through our day. And that's fine. I feel like sometimes we need to be put in a position where we have to reevaluate how we're eating so that we can get to the results that we're trying to get to. So I definitely would encourage people that if you find yourself stalled and you were doing net carb, switch to doing total carb and see what happens. And don't forget, 20 grams of carbs per day is a limit, not a goal. So the more you work on keeping your carb count lower, the better you're going to improve your success in terms of weight loss, in terms of metabolic issues, the better you're going to improve your health overall. I really want you guys to fight for your health like a true wellness warrior. Your health, your mental health, your physical health is so important. So let's get in there and fight for it. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, like and subscribe. I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, and I'll talk to you the next time.